now officially official. June 27th in Brooklyn, my hometown, the Kingdom of Brooklyn. June 27th for the WBA, WBO, super welterweight titles. Xander Zayas, and I have to say Zayas, Raheem, because there's a guy always in my comments hounding me for every video the last 2 weeks saying, stop saying Zayas, stop saying Zayas, pronounce his name correct. Xander Zayas is fighting Jaron Boots Ennis, defending his unified titles in a huge fight, an awesome fight, June 27th in Brooklyn at Barclays. So our last video where we discussed this, when this fight was on the way, we got a lot of angry comments. We got, I think, mostly happy people because the video did, 20,000 views, 600 likes, but all the comments were pretty angry at us, right? So before we read a number of comments from the audience, I will start by showing Raheem a clip of Roy Jones, who I spoke to over the weekend, who had Kevin Newman on the undercard, beat Elijah Garcia on the Keith Thurman, Sebastian Fundora undercard. I caught up with him. I asked him about this fight, and I asked him about comparisons between himself and Jaron Ennis and what he thinks will happen now on June 27th between Jaron Ennis and Xander Zayas. And what you're going to see Roy Jones say, the great Roy Jones say, is exactly what the fuck me and Raheem said 10 days ago about the fight. That A, it's probably too soon for Xander Zayas. B, that Jaron Ennis is a very, very special talent that he even compares and likens to himself, which is saying a hell of a lot. And C, that he wins the fight. So, okay, take it from Roy Jones.
Xander Zayas, man. What do you think? You think he could beat Boots Ennis?
Well, if anybody can beat him, but that's a hell of a task he's taking on at an early age, too, you know what I mean? So I would have liked to see him wait just a little bit longer, get a couple more fights in. But sometimes when the money calls, the fight has to happen. Money calls, the fight got to happen. So it's what it is.
Jaron Ennis, Tim Bradley, fellow Hall of Famer like you, breaks down the fights like you. He said that Jaron relies on his athleticism too much, and he got holes in his game Xander can exploit. That was something they tried to say, about you when you were doing your thing, Roy. Do you see that with Jaron, or that's not the case?
I don't see it with Jaron. I see Jaron as being a guy that's actually knows what he's doing and knows how to fight. Has talent too, but knows how to use his talent. Therefore, it's nothing to break down. And I think they'll find that out come this next fight.
Does he remind you of yourself at all?
A lot.
How so?
Well, he got so many things he can do. He know how to change things up on the spot. And you can be able to adapt and change up on the spot. That's what you don't find in most fighters nowadays. You don't find guys that if this ain't working, they can go do that. If that ain't working, they can go do that. You understand me? That was the one good thing about Bud Crawford. If this don't work, he can change right hand or left hand and try or right hand and try it another way. If this don't work, he can go back another way and try it again. So he had options. Most fighters today don't have options. They fight one way and that's it.
How tough a fight you think he would have gave Crawford if he would have got that opportunity?
It would have been a tough fight for him. I mean, we would find out what he's made of, but it would have been a tough fight for both of them. Because Crawford is that guy that knows how to adapt and make changes too. Ennis is a guy who can definitely make changes on the spot. And those are the makings of great fighters. So both of those guys in front of each other would have been a hell of a fight to see because they're both so adaptable.
What's the right way to describe a fighter like you or Jaron, where it looks like maybe he's breaking the rules, but he's really being creative and dynamic?
He's smart enough. He understands enough. He has a good enough foundation to do anything necessary at the time that it calls for it. So if it calls for throwing a leap and hook, he can do that. If it calls for throwing an overhand right, he can do that. If it calls for putting his hands down and setting you up to hit you, he can do that. That's what the great ones like myself were able to do. We are able to adapt on the spot. And it's because of having a great foundation. If you don't have a great foundation, you can't do that. So all this stuff about talent, no. Talent is more like Prince Nassim Hamed. Who can bang you but use his head to get away. None of that was natural. None of that was fundamentals. That's why when he met fundamental fighters, he had a bit harder time. What we do is fundamentally inclined. It's not just talent. It's not just luck. It's not just going through the motion. It's fundamentals.
Because people think sometimes, like he's mentioned with Prince Nassim, defensively, that he doesn't wear shots sometimes, Jaron Ennis. Maybe more than you did at times in your prime.
He does, but he's doing it. What he's doing off of his fundamental learning. It's not like he just going off talent doing it. That's his fundamentals. Trust what I tell you.
He's got a great jab.
He got a great everything because he's fundamentally sound.
In what fashion do you think he beats Zayas?
Well, It's going to be a tough fight because Zayas is a little tall, I think. And anytime you fight a guy tall like Zayas, he's going to be a problem. But I think if he just sticks to his game plan, he makes the necessary changes when it's time to make them, he'll be fine.
All right, now that we have heard what Roy Jones had to say about it, Raheem, it's time for us to get back at it and answer some comments. But before we get to said comments, anything you want to say before we get started?
All I ask is that the fans listen to everything that has been said. I am always completely blindsided by comments that seem to cherry pick the worst of what they hear. They only can hear the things they disagree with. It's not even like you get fans who only hear the things that they agree with. They only hear the things they disagree with and then go way over the skis, like way out there, as if it's the only thing that we said. Context matters. A lot of what I say, and a lot of you might say I say too much. Fair play. I try to keep it concise. But I have to set it up with where I'm coming from. If I say I'm speaking from this person's perspective or this promoter or this situation based on so-and-so, then that's the context for what's being said. You have to take that into account as to what comes next. What I will say, however, is I am enthusiastically impassioned myself by the passion in the comments. Like, people are engaged, they are reacting, they are passionate. They're just not great at listening to everything. I don't know if you're just listening to hear shit you don't want to hear, but between the two of us, between Sean and I, we really do, I believe, get a well-rounded, full perspective. And sometimes, especially me, in fact, maybe only me, but I do this, I will take a contrarian view. Sometimes I'll play devil's advocate. Sometimes I will think of things that are, a bit sideways. I'll give you a take that's unusual. We've heard some of all the other takes already. Sean is so right so often that sometimes I just have to be wrong, but also giving a different perspective on how you could see it the right way. There are many ways to look at some of these situations, and to just echo what everybody else thinks is not interesting. So sometimes I look at things from an interesting perspective. I'm not married to being right. I'm not that egomaniacal where I just can't be wrong. But I do think that looking at things in an unusual way or finding an interesting angle or presenting something as a possibility is fair. It's fair. Like, we're not writing tablets in stone here, people. Like, you know what I mean? But let's get to the personal attacks, because none of this, what I'm saying, matters anyway. All of this is going to be right out the window as soon as somebody hears something they don't want to hear, or they start talking about us like dogs. Like, we're really terrible people. So, you know what? I'm here for it. And maybe I can make some improvements in my personal life and presentation and appearance even. I am here to learn. I'm here to listen.
Yeah, me too, because people do hate my haircut, so amongst other things. So I hear you. Before I get to the comments too, when you're talking about that, I remember we made a video that I was so passionate about, and you met me halfway. You felt the same way when I presented to you about parasocial relationships in boxing and in general. And we had Stan from the Stan video from Eminem and as the thumbnail. Before the new year started, 2026, we made that video as like a PSA, and it got like 2,000 views. No one gave a shit. They want to hear about boxing. I understand. But the point I made in the video, one of them was, it was one thing when us grown men, and I've been guilty of it, would sit on the couch and watch sports and vicariously live the thrill throughout another man's achievements, and sometimes it would turn into inspiration, make you go run 5 miles or work hard in the gym. It would spur you on. It was one thing when you would sit there and watch and have the vicarious thrill of another man's accomplishments. In 2026, it's not even that anymore. It's vicariously living through being hated on. That's the thing. Like, there are fanboys going through videos and comments and narratives and discussions hoping to find out what they construe as hate so they can feel vicariously hated on, which is a whole other level. But anyways, let's get to one of the first comments, and we'll share them each on the screen. So to us, Raheem, even the analysts don't want fighters to fight good fights. Double facepalm. The entire conversation is just complexion for the protection talk. And then the next one saying, how are y'all preach ducking? Well, for the first one, and we'll get to another comment later where I called the fight sexy, right? And don't want good fighters. Eventually we get called basically gay for calling a fight sexy. Like we're being told that we don't want a good fight, and then when we like the fight so much that in the middle of the video I'm talking about booking a flight to New York because I can't wait to see it, despite the whole context we provided, that we don't want good fights. And then I'll bring up...
Fights can be sexy. Yeah. Sexy is not necessarily sexual. It is stimulating. It is exciting.
Appetizing. I'll use appetizing next time.
Seductive. It will make you spend your money. It will make you hop a flight. It will make you spend your night watching a fight. That is sexy. That is attractive. Like, get out of your Pornhub algorithm. There are other contexts. That's the word of the day. Context for these comments. Please continue.
So when they say the entire conversation is just complexion for the protection talk, we have a video from 10 days ago that I'll show the thumbnail of here, where Keyshawn Davis pressed Abdullah Mason, and we're both in agreement that Abdullah Mason is not ready for Keyshawn Davis because he is 6 years younger than Keyshawn Davis. Now, the dynamic here is a little different. Xander is a couple years older than Abdullah Mason. He is a unified champion, and actually in the same weight class as Jaron Ennis, whereas Abdullah Mason is not in the same weight class as Keyshawn Davis and only has one title as the youngest champion in boxing, whereas Xander Zayas is the youngest unified champion in boxing. But same kind of premise for Abdullah Mason, who is, checks notes, not Puerto Rican. And yeah, so what are your first responses to that?
What do we care about the complexion? Since when do we care about the color of a fighter, especially as a detraction or a protection? Like, if we're talking about boxing, you're talking about culture for sure. You're talking about geography, absolutely. Fighters rep their countries. Fighters come from their cultures. There's certain styles that are attributed to certain communities, 100%. That's always been a part of the conversation. There have been many promoters who promote fights off the back of racial conflict, and that's a part of the sport also. It's just ingrained in the sport. But Sean and I, having some bias because a fighter is Latin? I mean, maybe I could see the black and white thing, but based on the comments, you think we were in the opposite seats even on that. Like, let me put you all at ease. Like, neither one of us is engaged based on the race of a fighter as to how we would protect or promote said fight. Now, if you're talking about styles, yes. If you're talking about culture and the ring walk and where their pride comes from and how they may be motivated, or rivalries like Mexico and Puerto Rico, or black American fighters' incredible prominence throughout the history of the sport and how that has to be acknowledged, which Sean did. There is that, say it with me, folks, context for that kind of discussion. But what isn't there for Sean and I is racism or some type of promoting one fight over another simply based on the racial construct of the matchup. Like, neither one of us are even thinking that. Not even considering that. I read the comments and then I realize that that's what you're thinking. Understand where race belongs in the conversation. And it does when it comes to boxing, for all the things I just said. But racism and the analysis of a fight has no place. Has no place. As you might say, stereotypes, well, they exist in some regard for a reason, and there are positive stereotypes. There are stereotypes that can be taken one way or another. A Mexican fighter, come forward fighter, never takes a step back, all offense, sometimes taking 2 punches to give one. You can take that any way you like. You can think of that as a knock on a guy because his defense is his face, or you can think of that as machismo and warrior mentality, and he'll walk you down and break you down, and you can't stop a Mexican fighter. That's up to you and your culture and how you regard that. But that's what we're talking about. And for sure, nobody is protecting the complexion. Like,
well, another comment that I wasn't able to find, but I recall it in one of our videos was, you guys weren't saying this about Haney when he was getting ready to fight Lomachenko. Haney was 23. Lomachenko, long established, great fighter, right there, right? And it's like, well, first of all, me and Raheem didn't have a show when Haney was fighting Lomachenko, so it'd be kind of hard for us to do that. But I was on the Porterweight podcast, right? And I picked. You could check my numbers, check my files. Check my records, check my files was the line from Snoop Dogg and Y'all Gonna Miss Me from the Last Meal album. Anyways, that was the reference I was shooting for. But it was, I said I think it was the pandemic 2020, I picked Teofimo, who is obviously Latino, to beat Lomachenko, and he was the same age Xander Zayas is right now, 23 years old, I believe. And then 3 years later in 2023, I picked Devin Haney to beat Lomachenko. And why did I pick both of them to beat Lomachenko, and why was I not saying it's too soon for them? And a lot of people were saying it was too soon for Teofimo Lopez. That's why he was a 3.5 to 1 underdog, and why when he won, it catapulted him into stardom like it would for Zayas if he can pull it off, who's going to be about the same kind of betting underdog. But point being, I picked both of them and said both of them were ready because they had a size and a youth advantage. Lomachenko was a featherweight, a natural 30-pounder who had started at 26, getting to 135, and was the smaller man and was into his 30s. Ennis is 5'10 with a 74-inch reach. Zayas is 5'10 with a 74-inch reach. And he's 28, and it's actually going to be his birthday for this fight, Raheem. So this is his birthday present. He's going to turn 29, right at the apex of a fighter or an athlete's career, right at the age where you are now experienced and more mature as a man and as a fighter, but you still retain all the athletic gifts you've had, typically speaking, in your 20s, right? This is not the case here. There is no size advantage and there is no youth advantage for Xander Zayas. Different stuff. I will say, because people were saying, well, what about Moses Italma, who just yesterday I'm like, I think he might be able to beat Usyk, which by the way ruffles a lot of feathers of white Usyk fans, because Usyk is a white fighter, right? And they're going, how could you say that? How could you favor him over one of the all-time greatest heavyweights ever? There you are, pushing up that hype job, Moses Saitama, overrating him, blah, blah, he hasn't proven anything, blah, 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 blah. I just think Moses Saitama is a more extraordinary talent than Xander Zayas. Like, I just think he's better. So that's all that is. And plus, heavyweight has a different history of a young Clay knocking out Liston, there was the other one I brought up, Bo beating Holyfield, and there's a few other, Tyson not beating a great champion in Burbick or Tony Tucker or none of those guys, but being at that young age where he could get it done and that kind of thing. But anyways, just a few, before I get to the next comment, just a few examples I had to provide.
The circumstance that creates Lomachenko Haney is so different than the Zayas situation with Boots. Lomachenko, there was not a better route for Devin Haney to take, and all we were putting forward, specifically me, was that there's another route for Zayas to take that gets him to Boots eventually, but builds his stardom, gets out of the way, some of the championship building that can be done by Top Rank as they maintain their stable and get this fight to a level that it's not only worth the money, it's a much bigger fight, and Zayas is better prepared for it. A couple of more years, maybe just 16 months longer in the tooth, having experience against other fighters that will then prepare him for this moment where at the current state of affairs, while he's, yes, unified champion, so he shouldn't, and I said this then, this is what you want him to say. I want that fight, to demand that fight, to go after that fight. And I was speaking in context from the promoter's perspective. I said that at the outset. Speaking as Top Rank, what's best for them. We talked about this in the regard of Top Rank getting the deal with DAZN, and this, I believe, being a part of them getting that deal and feeding Zayas to Boots at a time when it's not best necessarily for Top Rank to put those titles on the line and put that fighter in front of Boots. However, the fighter does want it, and to be fair, this is arguably, I would say so though, how Top Rank lost Terrence Crawford. This is how Top Rank has made mistakes in the past, in that they won't make the fight that the fighter wants, even though you could make an argument that it's too soon, or that the fight could be built in a year or two bigger. More money can be made by everybody involved if you just wait. But fighters don't want to wait. Champions want to be considered the best in their division. That's why they became champion. They want to take the challenge. They want the money now. And that's what Zayas is saying. Neither Sean nor I are telling Zayas not to feel that way. And when I spoke about this being a bad choice and him being fed to Boots and it being not in his best interest from the promoter's perspective, from Top Rank's perspective, keeping Zayas, letting him build as a Puerto Rican fighter with the wind at his back, with that part of the country and the broader United States groundswell as a fan base for him, and then seeing Boots when he's a little bit more experienced and a bigger star is better for Top Rank. And maybe, in this case, giving your fighter what you want and getting the platform deal with DAZN that you need was enough to make Top Rank behave in a way that they haven't in the past. And I bet that they were a little bit salty about the Jared Anderson situation, and seeing what happens when people go around you and get straight to your fighter and put them in a fight that you don't think they should be in, but they think they should be in. Sometimes the promoter knows what they're doing. In this case, it's probably better for Top Rank, but all kudos to Zayas, and no one's trying to convince anybody to not do the fight. Fight's done. I think the minute Top Rank signed with DAZN, fight's done. That's part of the deal. This is me speculating, but that's what the writing on the wall is. Just before we move on, let me just touch on the Moses Atama thing. Yeah, I do think it's too early.
Yeah, you said that yesterday. You said that yesterday. Yeah, that's
to fight Alexander Usyk. Yeah, and Usyk thinks it's too early. No. And you might say that's just how he's swerving the fight, but I don't believe that to be the case. I take him at his word. I think he's like, I'm gonna break this kid. 14 fights in, nah. He's on his way up. I don't want to do to him what I'm going to have to do to him if this fight gets lined up. Granted, an argument can be made that he's just swerving a young, hungry,
Swerve is strong. I'm not saying he's swerving.
But for my money, I don't think Usyk is going anywhere super soon. We think we got Usyk around another 2 years. And I maybe don't think that this Tyson Fury fight materializes. So maybe the third fight in Usyk's lineup, maybe the final fight of Usyk's career, is to take the Atama fight and give the biggest prospect, the youngest lion, the one that everybody thinks might do this, and give him a shot at greatness, and on the way out, drop the mic, if he can, on a victory over the youngest, hungriest lion out there, and say, not only have I completed boxing, but I did the extra credit work. That's a nice story. I could see that happening sometime late 27. then it won't be too soon. Then it'll be a bigger fight than it would be now, and Moses might have a better shot at an older Usyk. What's the problem? Nobody's being inconsistent, but you got to look at everything. Say it with me, in context.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about Usyk almost 40. Again, there's an actual youth advantage there with a fighter well into their 30s versus fighting a guy who's 28, 29, who's got every bit of athleticism and quick twitch you got. I mean, Boots has more of it than Zayas. There is, anyways, different story. You know who also agreed that they're not surprised of the narrative that this might have been too soon for Xander Zayas? Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis, who did an interview today with my guy Jamil Parker from YSM Sports Media. Shout out to them, holding down Philadelphia and been growing his channel for years, doing great work. He interviews Jaron and he asks, why do you think people at first were skeptical the fight was going to make it to the finish line? He goes, because he's a young champion and could have took easier fights, could have went another route. And then Jaron said, but ultimately, I'm the biggest name in the division. And to speak to that point, Raheem, Jaron's second point, I was at Fundora's fight. We could definitely argue who the best fighter at 154 is. There is no king crowned yet. It's an excellent division, right? But no king crowned. Fundora sold a couple thousand tickets Saturday night. Virgil Ortiz sold under 10,000 tickets when he fought in the Dickies Arena and knocking out Erickson Lubin. Josh Kelly, who, when you talk about seasoning for Zayas, that is exactly who would kind of complete the seasoning, because he's fought Abis Barreau, a really good pressure fighter who, beat up Yoenis Tellez, who just got a good win over Brian Mendoza, who knocked out Fundora, a lesser version of Fundora than we see today, but still. And he fought Jorge Garcia Perez, who beat Charles Conwell, who was like a top 5 super welterweight, an Olympian, a legit guy. So it's not like Zayas hasn't fought some good competition. He has, but he hasn't fought an athletic mover. And if he were to have gotten, and that was his original pursuit, was Josh Kelly, if he would have gotten that opponent in the ring, then he'd be that much more prime. That's the 12 months from now seasoning you're talking about. But anyways, Josh Kelly didn't fight in a big venue, which is kind of rare for fighting in a title fight in the United Kingdom. That usually, no matter who you are, you're going to fight in front of 10, 20,000 people. He didn't. So the guy who did sell over 10,000 tickets, I believe twice, on the East Coast, in Philly, in Atlantic City, was Jaron Ennis. I think Steve tweeted a day or so ago that the only fighter selling tickets like that in the super welterweight division is Jaron Ennis. And so Jaron's second point was the kid wanted the money. And if you want the real money, you got to see me. And that he's the one backed by the network the most, because as we pointed out, DAZN owns 40% of Matchroom Boxing USA. But all we're pointing out is when Jared Anderson wanted that money against Martin Bacoli, and Bob Arum went on the record not being happy about that, it didn't end well. When Ryan Garcia skipped steps to fight Gervonta Davis at a 136-pound catch weight because he wanted that money, he wanted to skip steps and get right to it, it didn't end well. And we're just saying the precedent shows it probably won't go in Zayas' favor. Now, I don't know if Zayas, even with the Josh Kelly fight under his belt, would ever be able to beat Jaron Ennis. I don't think the kid's going to tap into his full man strength until he goes up to 160 anyways. But anyways, we'll get into a little bit of the technical breakdown of it, why Ennis is just probably going to be too much for Zayas. Although I think Zayas is going to hold his own in this fight and give a good account of himself. But before we get to that too, go ahead, Raheem, and then I'll read the next.
I believe this is the marking of the Todd DeBuff era at Top Rank. I don't think the Bob father would go for this. I'm almost certain that he would hold this fight back, and I can hear his voice ringing in my ears. It's not time. The fight can be bigger. Let it build. Let's build it. This is the way Top Rank operates, and for better or worse, and sometimes for the worse. But the Todd DeBuff era might look similar to the matchroom strategy, which is put guys in tough, make them prove their worth, continue to put bigger fights on and make Matchroom or make Top Rank the star and allow these fighters to make their medal in tough fights, and you can build a star faster that way. I mean, you know, it's not as if Zayas has no choice or no chance. He can win. We're not saying that this is an impossible feat, but he is an underdog, and for good reason. He does have skill. He does have ability. He does have a track record. And he is making an interesting, very interesting fight because he has 2 championships and Boots is coming in with nothing. And this is why we're all going to tune in, and no one is suggesting that he is completely out of his depth and has no chance to win, but he's got a better chance later. It could be a bigger fight for more money later. And it's probably the best thing for Top Rank and not as good a choice for Zayas. As a champion, a unified champion of that, it's a fight he should want, but I don't think it's a fight Bob Arum would give him. And so let's see how this Todd DeBuff era plays out. Let's see if what I consider more the matchroom model works for Top Rank. They've got a lot of young fighters. If this is the way they're going to go about it, these boys are going to get tested then early and often because even as Todd said on Ariel Helwani's show, it's going to be no hiding place. There's no across the street talk. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot you can say other than I don't want to fight that guy. And no fighter wants to admit that. So let's see what happens. Maybe, in fact, there will be an upset. Maybe we'll see a few upsets in the coming year or so and fights that we otherwise wouldn't have made. I'm here for it. But we just got to speak about these things from different angles.
I'm literally here for it. I will be in New York June 27th, okay? And right now they're number 3 and number 5 by the ring. This is a chance if Ennis wins to catapult past both Ortiz and Fundora, who are number 1 and number 2. You get 2 more straps under your belt, and if you show out against Xander Zayas, we're going to give you all the credit, which is what brings us to the next point. Which is, because it's funny, they go, well, once he does it, don't say he's too young. No. It's the opposite. We're going to say he's too young right now, and then once he does it, give him plenty of credit, okay? It's the inverse. But anyways, the goalpost will always be moved for Boots. Going to be the same story, just like when he beat Stanionis. Raheem, I present to the audience our video, I'll show the thumbnail, from a year ago when he stopped Amantas Stanionis in 6 dominant rounds in Atlantic City, on the 20th anniversary of Floyd Mayweather beating Arturo Gatti. And the thumbnail says, Shades of Mayweather Gotti, where we pretty much compare his performance to one of the greatest fighters that ever lived. I'd say we gave him some credit. No, did we not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can never give enough credit for a fan who is, what's your word?
The parasocial relationship. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In that relationship, it's almost like you can never say a guy's wife is too pretty. Like you're in love with these guys. You can't ever bestow enough on them to match the love that the fan has for them.
No.
And in the converse, if we're doing some geometry in our language, you can never hate on a fighter enough. If the fan hates him because he's the rival of his love. So no matter what we say about the matchup, wherever you land as a fan in your adoring of your favorite fighter and your obsession over the fighter that you see yourself in, and granted, I'm giving everybody a little needle right now. We all understand what being a fan is like and about. But I believe the reason that people have such a visceral connection to people that they don't know and only see perform their athletic prowess is because you see yourself in that guy. So if I say that somebody beats that guy, it's like me saying somebody's beating you. If you see an element of something displayed in an athlete, even if it's his attitude or his race or his culture or his geographical location or his religion or something that you tether to this person and feel like that's you in there fighting those fights, then you become incredibly sensitive around anything that's critical of that person. And you become somewhat blinded to their flaws, as you do your own, as I do my own. Just not associated with other people, because I am crazy enough to think that I should get on camera and on a microphone and people should hear what I have to say. That's how lunatic I am. That I actually have enough delusion about my own flaws that I'm willing to put them on display for everyone to criticize, which is exactly what we're running through now. Our incredible viewers and their criticisms, some of which are valid, but most of which lose and miss the context of what we've said, or really bestow upon us way too much intention around what they think is an offensive point of view. But we're here for it, literally here for it, and we are respecting your opinions by airing them and responding to them.
Yes, shit on me and Raheem, and you too one day will make the big screen of the podcast. So to that point, keep things balanced. There was also another fella who said, and this is a long comment, this Sean Zattel is such a narrative pusher and chases the algorithm for the populist. Top Rank has never publicly or behind any scene said that Xander was not ready for Fundora. Really, guy? You were there after Sebastian Fundora knocked out Cordell Booker at Mandalay Bay, and people from Top Rank spoke to me when Xander was right there and pushed up on Fundora. You were there, and they told you that? Oh, no, that's right, I was. But anyways, in fact, they purposely... Anyways, he goes on to say... the fact is, Ennis has not even mentioned his name once it's been Xander ready and open to sign the dotted line, just like he did with Virgil, who turned it down not once but twice. You're fanboying Ennis to stay popular. Get the fuck out of here. So to this guy, I am fan...
Is that them saying get the fuck out of here to you, or are you saying get the fuck out of here to
No,
him?
to me. That is the end of his comment, is for me to get the fuck out of here. That I'm fanboying Ennis, and I'm chasing the algorithm by favoring him to beat Xander Zayas. There's also another guy who said, you guys are a bunch of goofballs. Zayas is going to whoop that ass, so we're goofballs also for picking Ennis to win the fight. And then another guy saying, this shit is corny. People acting like Boots some unstoppable monster that destroys career. Stan Jonas is a stiff fighter that's nowhere near as good as Zayas. Zayas is also better than Karen or anyone else that Boots has ever fought. He's also better than Ryan. We're also corny now for favoring Ennis too. Well, his point is that destroying careers, which we're not saying he's going to destroy his career. And then there's one more too supporting Zayas. Y'all bring up resumes, but that shit's off the board with Ennis, huh? Because who the fuck has he fought in 35 fights? I like Boots, but he's not that special. I think Xander will surprise a lot of people. Boots looks good against C and B level fighters as well because he looks nice if he's better. Interesting, the two fights where Boots has gotten hit the most was against two guys that boxed and move. Just stay on that train if Boots loses. This is a true 50-50 fight, not a stoppage. How y'all think it is. And if Xander wins, don't come calling Boots a bum, which is what y'all do when the kids beat somebody. So now we're getting ready. We actually were teeing that video up to discredit Xander Zayas in this guy's. One side is saying we're teeing it up to discredit Boots, and now the other guy is saying we're teeing it up to discredit Xander.
Well,
I didn't know we could do both at the same time. Maybe we are.
One of the quotes that I hold fast and dear for all these many years as a boxing journalist was delivered to me by Steve Kim in the very early days. And he said, if everybody thinks you're biased for the other guy, then you're probably doing your job very good. If each fighter you talk to thinks you're on the other guy's side, you're probably doing a pretty good job. If everybody likes you and thinks you're on their side, you're probably shit at this. That's what happens. Everybody thinks we're on the other guy's side because we're giving multiple sides and perspectives to how to look at a single situation, fight, entity, fighter, or dynamic.
It's called...
Because between the two of us, and Sean and I
balance.
Genuinely don't agree on everything. And sometimes, again, in each of our cases, we'll look at things from different perspectives that we may offer that is not, it's not a zero-sum game. There is some nuance. Everything's not black and white. You can believe multiple things about one situation as a possibility and present multiple possibilities as to how the outcome might play. Because we don't know. Because you don't know. So this is a science, and we are all scientists looking at experiments that haven't happened yet and giving forward our prediction or our thesis on what we might see based on our experience in this science, on how these elements might react to each other. But nobody really knows until the fight happens, which is why we all tune in. You have to appreciate that there's more than one way to look at everything. So if we don't look at it your way, it doesn't mean we're your enemy. Doesn't make us corny. Doesn't make us any number of pejoratives that you might bestow upon us because you don't like what we think or how we think of something. But I will say that it is amusing. It is amusing. And sometimes I read in the comments, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I should dress different. Do I have on makeup? And then I'm like, oh, well, since I don't have on makeup, I'm doing something right. Maybe I need to continue living a life that makes me look as if I've put on some kind of makeup, which is wild. You know, so some things I appreciate. Some things I will take into account. Noted. But I don't know if we're getting to that comment, but it's in there somewhere. For those who are obsessed with this question, 0 makeup, absolutely none. And I do wear, let me get it for you guys. So,
Now it really is self-indulging.
That's my lip gloss.
All right.
We're not sponsored by, but maybe Carmex will see this and throw us some dollars, because we're also not being paid by any promoters or networks to offer any specific opinions. So maybe Carmex can help us out. But yes, these lips are shiny because they're moisturized. And, it's a thing. And the skin apparently is smooth. I mean, I'll have to give some credit to the lighting. I'm doing that. But also, stopped drinking many years ago. Work out now. Drink my share of water. Eat clean. Maybe that has something to do with this natural, God-given makeup.
There you go. Good for you, Raheem. Well, to continue on. So then, again, these will be the last of the comments, and then we'll close with one that I liked, that I thought was good. By the way, one of them said you could tell these two were raised by single mothers, and went on to talk a lot of shit about us. I said, ouch. Yeah, you're right, but geez, that's kind of mean. But he was right.
Yeah, it's single mothers who did an incredible job. Yeah, they're raised by single moms that deserve a major shout out. So shout out to our mothers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so complain when they make the fight, complain when they don't, could never be happy. And then the next guy, again, with the aforementioned comment, man, they got to stop saying that's a sexy fight. Sounds hella weird. So we're
full circle.
Yeah. All right. We call the fight sexy, and then it's you're gay for being happy about the fight, but you're not happy and you're complaining about it. Anyway, moving on. To your point about not being paid by anybody, one guy says these two have become agents of the promoters and the networks. Well, wouldn't we just be shilling from the fight for day one? Wouldn't we just be saying, yes, it's here from the heavens, Zayas Ennis, order now? We eventually got there to where it's like, yeah, I'm definitely covering this fight and thus going to help promote it, I guess, just by the nature of doing the job and showing up and interviewing fighters and stuff. And then the other guy, this one was even better.
Well, hold on. Let me jump in on that one, because
we're not really promoting it. I know, but I'm just...
Who haven't we criticized? Especially Sean Zettel?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you could make a case for me, because I'm often on the other side of the argument with Sean and just filling out, I would say, a fuller picture of how to potentially look at things. But this show, if you're paying us as a promoter or a network, well, you're just paying us to give you, the audience, exactly what we think, because no one has been spared. I mean, where is the bias? That's the funny thing. Like, name one entity in boxing that hasn't, at least in the past year and a half or so, come up against incredible scrutiny for their decisions or their statements or a fight or their associations or how they have affected the landscape of boxing, or has been shielded from any level of criticism, or any entity that we have promoted or given some propping up to unjustly or consistently. I would love to find some examples of that. Either one.
Well, I am now, a PBC show because I did my thing with Killer Cam and the lovely Treasure Wilson. That's what. Although nobody told Jermell Charlo this when he was ready to kick my ass for pointing out to him that he had not been there in 4 years. And I forgot that part when I was walking through the MGM after the fight saying, well, I guess Fundora will have to go on a PBC fighter retirement tour if he's not going to be fighting Ortiz and the winner of this fight soon. So
being on a platform doesn't make you inherently biased. It's what you do on that platform that determines whether or not you are biased or honest with your audience. It's not because Ring Magazine is owned by Turki Al-Sheikh that makes the pundits biased. It's what they say. It is what Max Kellerman has said that makes us critical of Max Kellerman as a fan base and on this show at times. And we give everyone the benefit of authenticity from the beginning, and you've got to break that. Devin Haney was just on Ring, and he's gotten great wealth and great opportunity from Ring shows and his Turki Al-Sheikh, and he went on there and spoke the truth as he sees it and challenged the narrative and did the thing. I, again, will say that's the best episode of Ring I've ever seen. Sean sat down on the PBC show with Cam and
picked Fundora by knockout and said this might be Keith Thurman's last fight. Kind of aged well.
I mean, you take Sean anywhere, and he's going to be Sean. He raises the level on any platform that he's on, and he's not changing based on who's paying for the camera. That's so. Not only is that inaccurate, but don't try to handicap or pigeonhole anybody, especially anybody who is consistently giving you unvarnished, unbiased takes, whether they're popular or not, for leveling up and getting some more shine. When a pundit or a journalist like that gets an opportunity, we should applaud it because a journalist like that is getting an opportunity, as opposed to all of these obvious shills and everyday mini promoters who are just doing this for access or saying whatever the network or promoter wants to hear so they can keep getting those opportunities. So credit PBC for giving Sean that opportunity and knowing that Sean was going to show up and be Zattel. Applaud that. Send a message to PBC thanking them for that. Don't come at us as if that ain't what it is, because that is what it is. Get what I said there? That is it is what it is.
Yeah, just like Cam Show. Tune in every week. Great show. And also there's some great people that work at Ring, despite what criticisms we'll have, like the great Keith Eidick, my guy Ricky, who does awesome interviews for Ring too, and shout out to Dougie Fisher, who we both go back with a long way. So to keep it pushing though, it's not the PBC hook. This guy says you both sound like you don't want these fights to happen. Zuffa double agents. He really solved it. Because we totally come off as Zuffa shills on the regular, I would say.
I mean, if we are Zuffa agents, we should be in the most covert levels of the CIA, because we can be double agents for anybody. I mean, we are really doing well at deflecting our real associations. Like, of late, yeah, I mean, Zuffa's taken the place of some of the Riyadh season criticism from Sean. Like, we're like, Zuffa's taken incoming a lot since they've begun doing fights. How are we Zuffa shills? I mean, come on, guys. Come on, try harder, at least. I mean, what did you hear? Have you listened to more than 30 seconds of any episode? How can you write that? I mean, some of these comments are just like, all right, are you just like trolling right now? Are you really just trying to see if we're paying attention to the comment section? We are. I'm in the comments all the time. I appreciate the engagement, but we are going to pull you up on the bullshit. That is just a bullshit comment.
And then lastly, we'll end on a positive one. C Bolts SPX says, and I like this comment, said multiple things can be true. Yes, Zayas is being tossed to the wolves, but he's unified, and it's 154. There's nothing but wolves. Secondly, we can't talk about the glory days of boxing with young champs fighting each other, fighting other prime greats, and then talk down on it when we get that now, regardless of it being a necessary risk or not. And for Boots, this fight is a must for his career. People in boxing know how great he is. The vets and household names are not getting in the ring with him unless they are overpaid and or getting a title shot. For Boots to get the challenges we want to see, Boots needs straps. Josh Kelly already ducked the fade. Best believe he isn't the only one. You win, sir. Well put. Two things can be true. Multiple things can be true. So thank you, sir. That is the concept. Yes. You win. You win. All right, now let's actually talk about the fight. It was only 47 minutes before we did that. Now that we've done that.
Yeah. I like that summation from this fella. Like, you know, so many more than two things can be true at the same time. In fact,
he said multiple.
We will explore,
he said multiple.
Yeah, multiple things. Yeah, that's true. Multiple things can be true at the same time. And so continue, please continue to give us your comments, your thoughts, your reactions, your opinions. We read them. We talk about them. We will more consistently, I think, respond to them. We'll make shows like this occasionally to get back at you. They won't always all be the negative stuff, but this one was so laden with so much criticism that we had to get at it, and I think we've now started a tradition of something that is positive and fun and taken in good spirit. So future comments. So don't just get in the comments and say negative, wild shit so your comment can get on the show.
No.
We're listening for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it'll all, you know, if it's interesting, make future shows. But we appreciate you and your engagement.
Yeah, we're about that action, even with you motherfuckers too. So as Bernie Mac said, Raheem, remember?
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Thank you. There you go. All right. So, all right, for the fight now, you know, why? My first thought, and I texted you, is why June 27th? Why Barclays Center? Why not June 13th? Puerto Rican Day Parade, Madison Square Garden, right? Why? It's like, are Benavidez and Zurdo, they're fighting May 2nd, right? Which is Cinco de Mayo weekend. They're not fighting May 16th, are they? They're not fighting 2 weeks after Cinco de Mayo weekend? Gee, I wonder why that is. But that, you know, like, I don't know. Call me crazy, but Zayas, who is being billed as the A side, at least in name, it's Zayas Ennis. Puerto Rican Day Parade is, you know, and by the way, I got a tongue lashing from multiple savvy people in this business, media members and suits alike, who told me it's not that big a fucking deal. Okay, it is not going to move mountains one way or the other. Whether it's on Puerto Rican, they said it's not like the Puerto Rican Day Parade comes with 2 tickets to go see the fight. Like it's you know, it's not like it's this big needle mover and everything that you're making it out to be. But I think it helps. But it makes sense if the fight's really geared up. Well, you break it down. What makes it make sense?
The Puerto Rican Day Parade would come with 2 tickets to the fight if the fight was on Puerto Rican Day weekend. There is a groundswell of national pride, regional pride in Puerto Rico. Everybody's in the city. There's floats happening. People are celebrating their heritage. You could tack that on to the back of a weekend celebrating the culture, and everybody floods Madison Square Garden. Some who are existing fans, some who are new fans, some who are bringing their buddies and girlfriends because the fight's in the city and it's on a weekend where they want to express their pride. And the Garden would be rocking, slam packed with Puerto Ricans and all types of other Americans that want to see this clash, and it's an easy fight to sell off the back of, especially because everybody's in town and want to shout and scream and wave their flags for their culture. It makes sense if the true A side is that Puerto Rican fighter, that unified champion, if that's who this thing is being built for, and this is that guy's moment to defeat the person in the division who everybody says is the best, but the champion's going to prove him wrong, well, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I don't care who says what from where. You can't tell me that that story doesn't write itself. Unless that's not the story you're writing.
Yes.
Unless the story you're writing is about the black fighter who wants to fight at Barclays, which is a black community spot, a couple of weekends after the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which is going to, by definition, be a more zealous Boots Ennis crowd, who is not a New Yorker, not even a New Yorker. He's getting his date in Brooklyn and Barclays, which is known as a PBC hallowed ground for black fighters. They are painting by numbers here to put those titles around the waist of Boots Ennis. And they are giving him a berth into New York in a Barclays Center, in a community on a weekend, which I might remind you, Sean, is going to come just after
Juneteenth?
Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Okay? So you could have Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend, or you could have the weekend after Juneteenth. And so these things are not lost on us. While some might consider this perspective too racially dense, it's a part of promotion. There are cultural moments that we sell fights off the back of, not unlike Cinco de Mayo every single year, Mexican Independence Weekend every single year. There are times when you can capitalize on people celebrating their culture. And if it comes down to Puerto Rican Day Parade for a unified champion who is certainly star is growing in his community, or giving the birth to a black fighter from Philly who's now going to be fighting at Barclays in Brooklyn, where there is an established pattern of this promoter building black fighters there as opposed to the Garden. That's the culture of the Brooklyn. That is the culture of the Barclays in Brooklyn. Well, then clearly we're making a choice here. Who is really the A side? Who do we really think is selling the tickets? Who do we expect to walk out of said arena with the belts? Mm-hmm. And if you had any question as to who is actually being set up to be victorious, who they're actually banking on to sell these tickets, now you know. That's how promoters think. That's how networks think. And that's why we're talking about it from this perspective. And that's why we're right. It's by every metric, that's why we're right.
Yeah, because again, I'll say it for the second time this show. If you tuned out or you forgot, Matchroom USA is 40% owned by DAZN, so they have more of a vested interest for Ennis to realize his potential as a star. And Ennis is knocking on the door of stardom and will become a star should he win this fight. And by the way, you could argue it's pretty smart on their part because he's gonna win this fight. We think. We don't know. We think. So, yeah, why? It makes more sense to tee it up as Zayas' coming out party to stardom if he's actually going to win the fight. But if you think Ennis is going to win the fight, then you tee it up to where you get the most bang out of your dollar, maximizing his performance, becoming a star-making performance. So it is what it is. And now to move on to the fight itself. And man, we might have gave him too much on the last episode because we really got into some good X's and O's already. But again, Zayas is a solid athlete, right? And I think he's not a... You mentioned he will land good shots. A lot of fighters land good shots on Boots Ennis, but Boots has shown a pretty good chin. And even though Boots who I think has a lot of talent on defense. Sometimes I liken him. This is too strong. I wouldn't say he's just a splash player, but like a splash player in football is a guy that can get a pick six. Like I think Trayvon Diggs from the Cowboys, he like set a record a year or 3 years ago for the most pick sixes in a year, like more than Dion ever had even. But he also wasn't rated as one of the absolute best corners because he gave up a lot of touchdowns too. He was either going to get burnt for 6 or he was going to pick it off and take it home for 6. And sometimes that's Ennis on defense. He'll have an amazing defensive sequence. Like, wow, look at the head movement, the reflexes, the shoulder roll. And then the next sequence, his chin is exposed and he's getting hit with a clean shot. And you go, ooh, so. But overall, I think his counter-punching brilliance makes him a plus defensive fighter. And I think his offensive creativity makes him one of the most brilliant offensive fighters in boxing today, which is why, if I'm talking personally, subjectively, Ennis, Benavidez, I like Inoue, I like Bam too, but if I had to boil it down to 3 guys I personally enjoy watching the most, Ennis, Benavidez, and Moses Itauma, who is quickly become one of my favorite guys to watch, but that's a separate thing. Just watching them again before we got on, Ennis, one thing he's got over Zayas is a good boxer, and I do think if you go 24 rounds with Karan Jukajan, I think Zayas is going to make it to the finish line. He may not because Ennis will really rise to this occasion, but I think Zayas is going to rise to this occasion too. So I think he'll hold. I think the kid is going to hold his own and give a solid account for himself. And my early pick is 116-111 Ennis with a knockdown along the way. But 8 rounds to 4. Not 10-2, not a stoppage. I think it's going to be in that ballpark. 8-4, maybe 7-5, maybe 9-3. But I do think you see Ennis at some point overwhelm and hurt the kid and drop him. But the kid will pull through it and keep fighting. Anyways, like Roy said in the beginning of our video, Ennis, he has a good enough foundation to drop his hands and set traps, to miss with a left and then conclude with a right. And he's one of the best punctuators in boxing, as Teddy Atlas. That's me on my Teddy Atlas. He's a terrific punctuator, right? But one thing that's going to be a problem for Zayas is he doesn't have quite the hand speed, the punching power, and the dexterity with his upper body that Jaron Ennis has. Ennis can flow like water all over the place with his upper body movement, and Zayas is more of a using his feet and his hands for defensive positioning. He's not gonna, and he's got good angles. He's got underrated angles that could surprise Ennis and those of us picking Ennis in this fight. He takes some good angles off his very educated feet, but he doesn't have that quick pull. He's got some pull counters, but not like Ennis. He doesn't have that quick, fluid, water-like, can make any kind of athletic movement on the fly. He's got to stay within a more narrow package. Ennis has the deeper bag. Ennis has more sauce. And I think that'll be a little bit too much for Zayas. But also, Ennis, go back and watch the Chukajan 2 highlights. And in round 1, he gets hit with a left hook and knocked off balance. He gets hit with a decent number of shots. And I think Zayas overall is better than Jukajan. And Zayas has the feet to when things get thick, he could survive really thick moments when he needs to. So I see this fight going the distance. I see Zayas giving a good account of himself. But I do see Ennis, obviously coming out on top. Don't count Zayas out, though.
What more can you ask for from a breakdown? That's all you need to know. I would only add, and maybe take this back up to the surface level, because you just got a deep dive. Let me take it back up to the level where the rest of us can breathe. And maybe even set this up for your casual friends who don't know either one of these names and wouldn't otherwise make this a party fight. But this is a party fight. This is a kind of fight where
a summer
the guy
blockbuster.
that's coming in, the guy who's coming in with the championships, the guy who's coming in Puerto Rico at his back, is the guy with the fundamentals. He's the fighter who is going to fight and be concise and exact and train and specific game plan to execute against a fighter like Boots. And this is a matchup that is also very classic in boxing. Whether or not the creative, explosive, kind of showboaty, oft-times black American fighter who is not going to give you the standard looks can overcome a fighter who is very efficient, who is very disciplined, who is going to fight in the way that you are trained to fight, who is going to rely on fundamentals, who is going to try to outbox that flashy fighter who those punches probably has a heavier hand, but also can be hit and will be exposed because he's so creative with his offense. Sometimes that is at the sacrifice of his defense. And so there will be openings for Zayas. Does he have the power to make those openings detrimental? Can he hit Boots often or hard enough to change the fight in his favor? Can he surprise Boots, maybe when Boots is off balance, making a shift between one stance and another, catch him off guard, hit him with a punch he doesn't see? Or can he even, with the fundamentals of boxing, simply outbox him, break him down, and not be there to be hit by some of these flashy, awkward, explosive punches that we expect that could potentially put him down in the fight or ultimately outclass his fundamentals? This is a really kind of classic dynamic in boxing when you have two very talented fighters. And in this case, you got the champion coming in with, I'd say, as much, if not more, to prove than the challenger. Because the challenger's coming in as the favorite on his weekend, if you will, in the Barclays, in his community, if you will. Clearly not the champion, but being presented as the A side and the expected victor. However, those fans of Zayas have a point to make. Maybe he knows something that Top Rank, Sean, don't know, and that he is ready, and that he's got a game plan specifically for this guy, that he will come in there and present himself as the champion he is and shut everybody up and really derail the already written narrative for Boots Ennis. That is possible. That is why this fight is definitely worth watching, and that is why, at the end of the day, we might end up with a classic. This could very well be the coming out party, the birthplace of a superstar in Xander Zayas. That halftime show might be a tip of the hat to the future. It's close enough as a possibility. Don't misunderstand Sean or myself, if I can speak for Sean in this case, in saying that no one on this show is suggesting that Zayas doesn't have a path to victory, that he couldn't potentially win this fight, that he can't be victorious on the night. He simply, in my estimation, and I think Sean's, got a taller hill to climb if that ultimately is going to be the outcome. But I really love these style type of matchups. The fundamental fighter that is disciplined and able to execute, be efficient, and try to best a fighter who is going to be flashy, explosive, creative, and probably have a rhythm, if you will, that the disciplined, traditional kind of fundamental fighter doesn't have. And see you, after 12 rounds, who's left standing, having put on the better performance. Classic, beautiful matchup, and a great opportunity for both fighters to prove themselves to be who they say they are.
Yeah, and Zayas has some rhythm, like a little salsa. You know, he's got some rhythm, man. You'll see it in the footwork. He's got.
Okay, not only am I clipping that out, but I haven't really seen a GIF in a long time. That's your first GIF, Sean. Let's do it. What does Zayas have? A little rhythm?
A little, you know, Tito Puente, baby.